That was dumb.
Okay, thank you.
It tells me, sorry,
So
I'm
I
on
feel
service
further
through the
this
network. Do I just need to sign it? Right, I mean, it says I'm
Those
still-
are good.
Right.
Yeah.
Alrighty.
Good question. Oh, yeah, yeah.
She wants service to the
And I
network.
don't know what this, I never, would never use this.
Yeah.
Use Matt's. I'll just try it here and see if I can just go in the good old fashioned. All the way out and all the way back in. No, it keeps bringing me to some Aruba login.
So you want to switch it up?
Go ahead and click on it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Here.
Good, yeah. I print all this stuff off. I mean, that just is my house.
I'm just gonna sign out.
Do I need to
So,
add
oh, well.
myself?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's my board.
Right.
Lisa W.
Oh,
Oh, that's right. Oh, that's my other. That's my work.
Lisa,
I'll figure it out, yeah.
Okay.
Don't. Oops.
it is now 6:38 PM and we are out of closed executive session. At this time, we will reconvene the regular meeting of the Board of Education with the pledge to the American flag. Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Booker,
Here.
Mr. Herrera,
Here.
Mrs. Haut,
Here.
Miss Maybell, here, Mrs. Reed Nemick,
Here.
Mrs. Whitcomb,
Here.
Mr. Zickert.
Here.
According to board policy 2220, Mr. Zickert will be joining us via phone this evening as he is a board member that is attending due to personal illness. Are there any items on the agenda any members of the board would like to amend or move?
Yes, I would like to amend the agenda. Make sure I've got the right. So I would like to amend the agenda to move item 10 under roll call action items to board discussion, letter K.
Member Mayville made a motion to move roll call item number 10 to board discussion letter K. Do I have a second?
Second.
Member Whitcomb seconded the motion. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Miss Maybell.
Aye.
Mrs. Whitcomb.
Aye.
Mr. Herrera.
Aye.
Mr. Zickert.
Aye.
Mr. Booker.
Aye.
Mrs. Haut.
Aye.
Mrs. Reed Nemick.
Aye. Motion passes 7-0. At this time, I would like to ask everyone to take a moment of silence in memory of the District 100 students who were tragically killed in the Poplar Grove house fire earlier this month. Elizabeth McConaughey, Belvedere High School graduate, Danica Tapman, and Zosha Tapman from Belvedere Central Middle School, and Anula Tapman from Seth Whitman Elementary School. Our hearts and prayers go out to their friends and family, as well as to our teachers and staff at each of these schools. This is a great loss. At this time, we will conduct a public hearing to request a waiver modification of the administrative code or the school code. The district has been utilizing a waiver of school code to use 3 full days for school improvement and professional development activities instead of 6 half days. Each waiver is granted for up to 5 years. District 100's current waiver was approved in 2017-18 and expires at the end of this school year. The application allows the district to continue its current practice if desired for an additional 5 years from 2022-23 school year through the 2027-28 school year, and does not require the district combined school improvement days. If anyone would like to speak to the board in regards to this waiver or modification of the administrative code or the school code, please come to the podium at this time and state your name for the record with your comment. Hearing none, this will conclude our public hearing on the waiver modification of the administrative code or school code. Next, we have our student council reports.
Hello, I'm Naomi Cash from Belvedere High School. Student Council President. So for today, we have no weekend report. Washington Academy, fifth graders completed the Illinois Science Assessment this month, and they all did a terrific job. Our students met their PBIS goals last month of reducing our disrespectful referrals. They only had 2 referrals in the month of February and earned a hat day. We're looking forward to having our BSSER sponsored STEM night on March 25th to promote student and family engagement at Washington Academy. South Middle School. SMS students are preparing for upcoming IAR assessment next week. Good luck, students. Last week's SMS Open Gym was a hit, with about 400 students attending 2 different sessions. Sports and clubs are in full swing, literally. The SMS OP begins next week, while the Girls on the Run, our club, started this month. The track season also began this week, with meets beginning next month. Belvedere High School. VHS has celebrated School Social Worker and School Counselor Appreciation Weeks during the month of March, as well as Women's Appreciation Month. Allison A's, Haley Sweeney, and Alan Ryan competed in the District Proficiency Award competition on March 9th for FFA. And Allison took home first place in dairy production. She competes at the state competition on March 26th. VHS students have engaged with the first 2 parts of the 6-part digital citizenship program during their book clubs this month, helping them to develop important skills and perspectives regarding online safety. Lastly, VHS expresses its deepest condolences to the McCogany family and Catman families and to everyone in and out of our District 100 community affected by the losses of our current and former students. Thank you.
Thank you, Naomi. At this time, members of the public and employees of District 100 who submitted comments via email will be read, and those attending in person may make public comments. We'll start with public comment first. As a reminder that this is a professional business meeting, and as such, all attendees from board members to speakers to public attendees are reminded to conduct themselves professionally and refrain from the use of profanity, unprofessional language, and/or verbal or personally directed attacks. Verbal comments from the public are restricted to those being delivered during an individual's public comment as indicated on the board agenda. Unsolicited verbal comments, outbursts, and profanity and physical disruptions directed at members of the Board of Education, the superintendent, administrators, and/or audience members is not allowed and will not be tolerated. If such an occurrence occurs, a verbal warning will be given by the president. And if an individual is identified as a continued disruption during the board meeting, the individual or individuals may be asked to leave the meeting. If necessary, the president or superintendent may request the assistance of law enforcement to escort the individual or individuals from the building. Per board policy 2230, the board must allow a minimum of 30 minutes of public comment and a 20-minute minimum total length of time for any one subject. If we reach 30 minutes on any given topic this evening, I may request an end to public comment. In order to give the maximum number of people an opportunity to speak, please attempt to limit your comments to 3 minutes. Please be sure to state your name for the record if you would like to make a public comment. Are there any that would wish to do so at this time? Okay, I will move on to emails submitted. This email was submitted by Hunter Eustich on Saturday, March 5th. Hello, I'm reaching out in regards to 8th grade teacher Lisa Zupan at BCMS. It came to my attention that she was let go of her position, and I think this should really be reconsidered. I have nothing but good memories from my past experience in her class. She never gave up on her students, and it really helped me succeed. She has great teaching techniques that help students want to participate and learn. She never hesitated to help and gave great points without making things too confusing for her students. She really understands how to connect with her students and help them succeed with more than only their grades. I would really appreciate it if this email was read at the next board meeting on March 21st and be strongly reconsidered. Former student Hunter Eustich. Next is from Bree Demodica. Saturday, March 5th is when it was received. Hello, my name is Britton Demodica, and I'm sorry if I butchered the name. I had Lisa Zupan when I was in middle school. I just recently graduated high school early. Middle school was the roughest time family and life-wise I've ever experienced, but daily I walked into Ms. Zupan's room and she never failed to have a smile on her face. She taught with such enthusiasm and passion. She wanted to connect with kids and have that connection build their interest into education. Her passion and commitment to her students led to me making my entire family take a vacation to Colonial Williamsburg, Arlington, Mount Vernon. Teachers with that kind of heart, that kind of passion are few and far between now. Kids this day and age need an adult willing to go that extra mile to connect with them, not only on a social level, but willing to learn their ins and outs and teach in a way that will benefit that person, that class, that group. Ms. Zupan is one of the rare few and one of the 3 people I can contribute to my academic achievements and motivation in life now. Thank you for your time, and please read this at public comment at the March board meeting. And the next one was provided by, do you have the last name?
I think it's in board docs.
Oh. This is from Trey Logston or Logston. Hello all, I had Ms. Zupan as my 8th grade language arts teacher at BCMS, and it was one of my favorite classes to date. Ms. Zupan always showed that she cared about her students and their success. She tried to make learning as fun and as enjoyable as possible with games like Trash-Get-Ball. I graduated with the class of 2021, and if I could go back and ask everyone who was in that class about it, I'm sure they would have nothing but positive things to say as well. Ms. Zupan undoubtedly deserves to be reinstated as a teacher because she, unlike many teachers today, cares about education. I'm unsure on the circumstances in which she was removed from her position at BCMS. However, as her previous student, I am sure she is a great and influential teacher despite the current situation. Thank you for reading, and I hope that this can be read at the board meeting on March 21st. Seeing no additional public individuals wishing to make comment, public comment is now closed. Next, we have our Board of Education committee reports, starting with Facilities and Long Range Planning Committee that met on February 23rd. Dr.
Can we jump in for this?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we looked at the different projected facility plans. I think there's a description of that in there. Probably the big thing coming from the committee right now is just a request to find out some more information about a capacity study, which would, when we did the demography study a handful of years ago, we had kind of a generic square footage capacity per school that we were looking at. You can engage services of usually an architect company to provide a more detailed look at how many kids can fit in a classroom, how many kids should be in a school. That's more than just a generic per square footage amount. So I'm working right now to get more information from 4 different firms. So we're just waiting for that to happen. I think Tyler and I, when we talked through information, we're going to skip this month's meeting because we're still waiting to meet with all the architects, and we'll meet again next month.
Does anyone have any questions? Okay, Business Services Committee meeting that met on March 8th. Mr. Booker?
We discussed the air quality studies, and we discussed the masonry repair bills, and we'll have that later in the meeting as well. We did a salary study for the Bass Union, and we have a recommended proposal that's going to come up later in the meeting for that. And we had some MOUs for the BEST, BESA, and BASS unions that is coming up later as well.
Mrs. House, do you have anything to add? Okay, moving on to curriculum committee meeting that met on March 9th. Mr. Zickert, would you like to give a report?
Yeah, just real quickly. There were two items on the agenda. One was the sick day waiver that was voted on, approved to keep 3 full-day sick days with teachers and administrators approved. Thought they were far more effective than the 6 half-day ones. Second one was Ester Iii spending priorities. Basically, we were presented with a list of many possibilities of spending for Ester Iii. Some we talked about before, some we had. So after a vigorous discussion on a lot of them, we were asked to prioritize which 3 or 4 that the committee felt were of the priority. And the top choices were air quality, more community use of school. Bandwidth was an easy choice for everybody, and finding some way to for teacher retention was the other one that gathered the most interest from that group of people, and that was took up a majority of the meeting.
Okay, does anyone have any questions for Mr. Zickert? Okay. Moving on, next on the agenda is our consent agenda items. Are there any items on the consent agenda any members of the board would like to take out for separate consideration? I would like to note number 8, MOU for vacancies for BEST union, and number 9, MOU for vacancies for BESA union have been pulled by administration. Do I have a motion to approve the items for consent agenda, not including 8 and 9 as it's been pulled by administration?
I move to approve the consent agenda with the exception of items 8 and 9.
Second.
Member Mayville made the motion and Member Hauk seconded the motion to approve consent agenda items with the exception of 8 and 9 as they were pulled by administration. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Ms. Mayville,
Aye.
Mrs. Hauk.
Aye.
Mr. Booker.
Aye.
Mr. Zickert,
Aye.
Mrs. Whitcomb,
Aye.
Mr. Herrera,
Aye.
Mrs. Reed Nemick.
Aye. Motion passes 7-0. Next, we'll be moving on to our roll call action items. Do I have a motion regarding grading philosophies?
Motion to approve grading philosophy.
Second.
Member Zickert made the motion and Member Herrera seconded the motion to approve the District 100 grading philosophies as presented. Any discussion?
I just wondered if Dr. Carson could maybe explain a little bit. We had some conversation surrounding number 5 that I felt was illuminating and clarifying for me. And I don't know if anyone else finds it helpful, but I found it helpful. Anyway, so is that something you would be willing to do?
Yeah.
I thought we were having a presentation on that. I'm sorry.
It's okay. So these were updated, the grading philosophies were updated based on the feedback that we've been working together over the last few months. And so they seem familiar, but hopefully you notice that there's some changes, some improvements to them. And so in particular, number 5, that was a really interesting one because the whole idea here is this should describe what we're trying to establish as a grading system, the philosophies that define both of what happens in the elementary school as well as the middle school and the high school. So it needs to apply to all 3 of those levels. And so item 5, there's this grades will reflect the most recent information on the student at that time, and early learning and practice opportunities will not hinder the final score. So that gets applied differently. So you'll be looking at the proposals here in a moment that describe how we put those into place. And so in an elementary setting, we use the most recent score. So it's quite literal that the grade is the score determined by the most recent score that the students earned, which would then not cause further learning perceptions of their score. Whereas in high school, it's more of the fact that their grades are going to be always updated with their most up-to-date information, which you'll see in the morning as a percentage-based score. And we have created weighting in our proposal for practice to weigh about 20% up to 20% of the student's grade, whereas the more summative type assessments would be at least 80% of the grade. So again, the early learning plays a smaller portion of the role of student's grade determination.
Thank you, I appreciate, fitting both elementary and the statements are not incongruent with one another, they just apply differently. Got it. Okay.
Seemed like habits of work in elementary, they're still going to get scale scores in the habits of work, while in middle school and high school, they'll get comments from teachers. So again, there's feedback that's being provided, but how the feedback is provided is differently.
Any other questions? Roll call, please.
Mr. Zickert,
Aye.
Mr. Herrera,
Aye.
Ms. Mayville,
Aye.
Mrs. Whitcomb,
Aye.
Mr. Booker.
Aye.
Mrs. Hope,
Aye.
Mrs. Reed Nemick.
Aye. Motion passes 7-0. Do I have a motion regarding the recommendation for elementary school grading system?
I move to approve the elementary grading proposal as presented.
Second.
Member Mayville made the motion and Member Herrera seconded the motion to approve the elementary grading system plan as presented. Discussion?
Just one quick question. The transition plan for 5th grade to 6th grade, are they using the same system, the grade school system then in 5th grade, or are they going to use the junior high system or some kind of hybrid of that?
So the idea would be that they would use, starting out in 5th grade, they would use the same system that they're using kindergarten to 4th grade.
Okay.
And then start to transition them in the 3rd trimester. They didn't develop what that plan was fully yet because we don't yet officially know what the middle school
Makes sense. Got it.
system is.
Thank you.
That's part of the action plan.
Any other questions? Roll call, please.
Ms. Mayville.
Aye.
Mr. Herrera.
Aye.
Mrs. Hope.
Aye.
Mr. Zickert.
Aye.
Mr. Booker.
Aye.
Mrs. Whitcomb.
Aye.
Mrs. Reed Nemick.
Aye. Motion passes 7-0. Do I have a motion regarding the grading system recommendation for middle school?
I move to approve the middle school grading proposal as presented.
Second.
Member Mayville made the motion and Member Zickert seconded the motion to approve the grading system the grading system proposal for middle school as recommended. Any discussion?
Go ahead.
I did put together a presentation that really gives an overview of both the middle school and high school systems that answers. I appreciate all the questions I've been getting from board members as well as school staff, and so I'd be happy to walk through that and hopefully address any questions.
I think that would be very helpful to me and possibly some others that are
Okay.
with us this evening.
So,
Do any board members object?
No?
Okay.
That was a pretty.
Okay, so given that we are proposing a system that is not what we have in place now, I thought it'd be worthwhile to walk you through some of the details of that system. And wanted to start with clarifying what our overall goal here is we are focused on improving student achievements. And really the strategy here is to develop a grading system that's aligned, feedback to the measures that we use for students to determine if they're achieving, so that it's easily understood by students, parents, and teachers. So what I want to lay out here is that if our goal is to increase student achievements, one way to think about this, how I'm framing this, is on the left there we have our learning standards, the Illinois State Learning Standards, and that really defines what it is that kids should know and be able to do. The state then has an assessment system, IAR in our elementary schools and SAT in our high schools. And the intention there is to measure how are students doing in terms of growing towards those standards. And we have worked for the last few years to analyze those standards, take a look at those assessments, and identify what are the most critical outcomes that students need to know and be able to do. And those are the prioritized standards that we have with that blue bar in the middle. And then with those identified standards, we have really invested a lot of time and energy in developing our teacher teams to work in professional learning communities. And I put those kind of three cogs in the wheel there, three aspects of what that is. And so there's teaching and learning, right? There's curriculum and instruction. So based on those prioritized standards, teachers spend a lot of time putting together materials and resources and developing instructional strategies to help students to make progress towards those standards. They develop assessments. So the goal should be that those assessments are aligned back to those prioritized standards, which should then be aligned back to those state standards and state assessments. And we use those assessments then to determine which students are ready to go and are doing what they need to do, which ones need some intervention, and which ones would we like to extend some opportunities for enrichment. And that's a cycle, right? All that, the information from our assessments should inform the interventions. It should also inform the curriculum and instruction that we're providing to students. And a byproduct of all that is we assign students grades based on those assessment scores. And that the goal is our scores, our grades should be a predictor. We should be able to look at student grades in classes and say, kids are doing really well on their addition, subtraction, multiplication. Right? So we should expect when it comes time to take the IAR, that they're going to do well on those skills that are part of the curriculum. What I would like to suggest is when we think about how we assess a grading system, it's kind of like, I guess the analogy I would make here is if we were building a race car and the goal is to win a race, the grading is more like the gauges and dials, right? To tell us how the car is performing. You know, is our engine running like it's supposed to be? We have enough oil, you know, it gives us measures on the performance, but it isn't the engine under the hood or the transmission that actually makes the car perform, right? What is going to lead to student achievement is not a grading system, but it's good teaching and learning, good intervention, good assessments. The grading is there to give us feedback and help us know if all the engine, the transmission, and everything are working the way we would expect them to work so that we can perform. So the process I worked through since we got the signal that we need to put together a new plan here is we took the opportunity and appreciate all the time that board members spent with us giving us feedback about what improvements need to be made in our new proposal. From there, took the opportunity to get some feedback directly from our parents and our staff. We'd already in the fall gotten some feedback from our students. And then took that feedback and part of one of the questions on those surveys was a chance to indicate interest in participating in a forum. So I hosted 2 forums back in February that were attended by parents, students, and staff. And we had some conversation about the feedback that they've given about the system that we were using. And then I had a team that took that feedback and dialed that into the proposal that was in draft form. And so that team met, as you can see, twice in March. And in between that team meeting, and that team consisted of represented across the section of certified staff. So we had teachers, counselors, administrators, district administrators, and we had students as well. So in all those meetings, we had students attending, and they helped to give us some feedback on the proposal. So that was the process that we worked through. Linked into this presentation, which is available on Board Docs, is a link to all those those data points that we were provided, all that feedback we were provided. And so out of that, gleaned that there are some key characteristics that we want to have, right? We have the philosophies that give us principles to base this on. This is more the characteristics that we would want out of that grading system. And you can see that list there. It should seem familiar. We've been having lots of conversation about this, but really boils down to we want to have a system that's really clear, that's really accurate, that's consistent, that lets us know how our students are doing in terms of their performance in class, that we can use that data. We got a lot of feedback that we want a grading platform that's reliable, and that we want to create some accountability for students to make sure that they're completing work at a time of passion. And then it uses a percentage, a percentage of letter grade system. So from that, this is basically a graphic I tried to make to represent what is before you as a proposal. So how this system would work is that we are taking those state standards, and I did an example here. This comes from my own home life. My daughter's in 7th grade over Central Middle School, and they've been working on proportions lately. So this is my evening activity, is helping her with her homework on proportions. So I have a real personal connection here. And so we have from the documents, the curriculum documents that we've been using in our school district, our teachers have spent years identifying what the standard is asking the students to be able to know and to do. And they've also spent a great deal of time identifying what's the knowledge and skills that students need to have in their back pocket, already ready to go in order to demonstrate mastery of the next standard. And so we already have those clearly called out and identified. And so as teachers are then working to develop that curriculum and instruction and assessments, you can see that kids will have the opportunity. So you can see there's my daughter has to learn how to explain what ratios, identify what ratios are, right? So she had homework the other night where that's what she was doing. She was looking at fractions and trying to figure out what the unit rate was. And so that was one homework assignment, which would be on the bottom there. And that would be what we consider formative practice, right? So it's early learning. She's just trying to figure out how to do this. She's not expected to master it yet. It's just some practice. Then the next day, she came home and she had graphs and tables. And we had to figure out using a graph what was the unit rate, basically, the proportion on that. So again, that's practice. She was just learning that. She was making mistakes. We were working through that. And so in this model, that would make up to 20% of the students' grade. And it would be based on the points that they learned. I'll go over that here in just a second on the next slide. And then what would really be the significant portion of her grade is when she then takes a test or does a project, writes an essay, whatever the case may be, where she has some kind of assessment that measures at the level of the standard, the level of rigor that the standard calls for. Does she have the skills and can she show the knowledge that's expected? In addition, in the proposal, I put the word reassessment up there because we create some language that allows teachers by whether it's grade level team in our middle school or content area in our high school, but by the so there's consistency between courses, right? That's the goal, is we want to have consistent expectations. So if a student walks into one math class, the expectations are consistent with what they've seen in another class. And those expectations around reassessment are that students have to show, they have to put forth some effort and demonstrate that they're continuing to improve their performance with that standard, and there has to be some timeliness around that. So departments will have the ability this spring through the summer and then before school starts to come up with some consensus around what their expectations are for their courses. So overall, a grade will be determined with that conversion chart up in the top right there of these percentages equal this letter grade, which that should look really familiar. That's what's been used in our schools for decades. And so to explain this a little bit more on this next slide, I gave some examples here. So when Nora did her homework there, let's say she got a 9 out of 10 on that first assignment on identifying the proportion there. That's a 90%. So on that activity, she would have got a 90% or an A on that. And so I'm proposing that our teachers will be using eSchool for their grading system, and then Canvas for the learning management system. We'll not be using Empower next year. And so that when a teacher enters that 9 out of 10 in the system, it recognizes that as a 90%. And so if that's the only evidence in the system at that point, Nora has a 90% in the class, right? This is how a traditional gradebook works. It's exactly the same as how gradebooks worked in our school district 5 years ago, 10 years ago. Once she gets that second piece of evidence and she's still just doing formative work, then she gets 80% on that. So she's now got an 85% average. So as a parent, when I hop into eSchool or she is a student or her teacher looks in there, that's the overall grade she would see. Then once she takes those assessments, which are 80% of her grade. Again, those just get averaged. And so everything's being averaged, but there is some weighting then based on the categories that those points fall into. At the end of that, when she's working on this proportions unit, we would be able to look in the system and see that on proportions, she got an A, she got a 92%. Which that tells you the story of one standard, but that isn't how she gets her full grade. So you can see it, what I did here is I added, there's the proportions in the blue up there. It's the same scores that we were just looking at, and same grade for that standard. And then we add in the next unit on percentages. And so I just put in some other sample data there. She didn't do so great on percentages as compared to proportions, so we always got to do some work here. But you can see again that there's 20% of the practice in the left hand, like really middle column there, and then the major assessments on the right. And so again, you can see what her percentage by standard would be. However, her overall grade is not based on those standard scores. What it is based on is what's in those two columns. So again, this is how a traditional grade system works. And this is how her grade would be determined, is the same way we would do it in the traditional system, is that we take the total number of points that were possible, divide how many she got by that total possible, and you get a percentile score for that category of the early practice, the formative work, and then the summative. You weight those two categories. It's a simple math calculation, and that gives you an overall percent of what her grade is. So if Nora was to get a grade right now, based on this, she would have a B. Now, what we've gained here is that I, as a parent, the teacher, Nora, can look and see Nora's doing awesome when it comes to proportion. Way to go. We're good with that, but we need to spend a little bit more time on percentages. And again, we can connect that back to, we shouldn't expect Nora to do really well on the ARR if percentages is on that. So what I want to show you next is what it would look like in each school. So this is mock data, different than what I just showed you. So this is what the landing page looks like. It just lists assignments from top to bottom, most recent to least recent. Okay, the same way each school works 5-10 years ago. And right there in the red circle, that's her overall grade. So that's the first view that parents and students have. They can click on that little button in the middle, and then they can switch over and they can see how they're doing by standard, and which activities, assignments are by standard. And I know you can't read that from where you're sitting, but over there on the right, that is the number of points possible. So that's what it looks like for a student. For a teacher, they can see, and again, I know you can't read that very well. It's in Word docs that's showing what the percentage is. They've got a whole list of all the assignments, again, that goes from most recent to least recent. They can click on a button here, and they can see, this is where it shows the standard breakdown. So they would see by standard how their students are doing. Or they can click on this view where they see the detail that drills down into each standard and shows them how the students are doing with all the activities and assignments that are aligned to that standard. Again, these scores tell you how the standards are going, but does not affect directly the overall score of the students. So if we're given approval of these proposals tonight, I just want to walk you through the action plan. This Friday, I actually have a meeting scheduled with our principals and instructional coaches. Nothing kicks off spring break like an hour-and-a-half meeting to talk about plans. So that's what we're preparing to do on Friday is get ready for SIP Day. SIP Day is in the middle of April, so not too far after we get back from spring break. So we're going to be ready for that. And what we're going to be working on SIP Day is making sure that there's some clarity about this system. Part of that is going to be asking questions, right? And listening to teacher questions. The analogy I would give you here is that this is kind of like making a jigsaw puzzle, right? I think our plan here is going to give us the borders. We're going to be real clear on what the parameters are of the system. But there's a whole lot of details that we're going to have to work on filling in here with teachers. And some of those we haven't even yet thought of to ask the questions, and our teachers are going to help us uncover that really quick. And we'll be putting together professional development then. And on SIP Day, we'll also ask them to start working on those common syllabi, right? They're going to have expectations about those weighting of the 80-20 and then their reassessment timeline. So they'll have a chance to start those discussions on SIP Day. Spring and summer, we'll be doing a lot of back-end setup. We'll make sure that it's going to be ready to run for the teachers in the fall and put together training. So then the training, of course, kicks off with new teacher orientation institute days. So we'll make sure we can greet our new teachers and help them understand the system, and then help our teachers who have been with us to make sure they're ready to go for the first day of school, and then getting some communication ready for our students and parents. In the fall, we have our instructional coaches who will provide ongoing support. which is both the pedagogical, how the practice is, and it'll also be the technical of, oh, this part of the school ain't working like it's supposed to. They'll help us get through that. We'll gather some feedback, just like we did this last year in October. And as it stands right now, the expectation is we should bring back to you an update or report about how things are going. So that is a roadmap from here, presuming, making an assumption here, that you approve this proposal. So I'd be happy to answer any questions.
On your first slide that had East School, yeah,
Right there?
that one.
Yeah.
In regards to the scores that are not there, does that mean that they have not been attempted yet, or the student just hasn't done it for one reason or another?
For whatever reason, well, this is all just fake data. that-
Correct, correct.
Yeah, and then what it would mean is there's an assignment that's been assigned in each school, but there's been no score given for it.
Okay. And then your plan for reassessment, that would be only for summative evidence or both summative and formative
Well, I think with-
evidence?
With the formative, it would just be, you haven't gotten it done yet, let's get it done, right? But then the summative, because of its weight, right, that would be the focus of this.
And e-school and Canvas are being used at the grade school level as well, right?
Mm-mm.
So they use Mastery Connect. to
Or Mastery
track the
Connect, sorry.
grades.
But
We give report cards to each school, though, so the grades, the scores do end up in the school. That's how we issue report cards in the elementary schools. And then they also use Canvas. That's correct.
okay, so no empower.
Their own power.
Yeah, one quick question on the grading system for that. I think like on reassessments and things like that, when they talk about team versus departments and things like that, and there's some nuances. I think that middle school classes are a year versus a semester. You know, in high school that they get semester credit for. It's not so much like that in middle school, so to speak. That there will be ongoing work with your group and the teachers to collaboratively come up with a plan to address some of the things, because there probably, as you said before, there's going to be a lot of housekeeping things we can't anticipate, and some we can, and some we have been brought up already. But once we get through those, there are probably going to be a few more. So I suspect it's going to be an ongoing process for some of what I would call the housekeeping things or some of the specific things that haven't been addressed. But there will be collaboratively. Is that correct assumption?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. We'll definitely be collaboratively, and I appreciate, I think we did some really healthy conversation with board members and myself around what's the right mix of how loose and how tight we want this to be, how prescriptive versus how general, to allow that latitude, that professional discussion that we need teachers to have, and that flexibility as we learn and grow. And so absolutely, it would be a collaborative.
Thank you.
I just want to say too, I appreciate all the parents, all the staff, all the students who participated. This was a really robust and rapid process for developing it, and I feel like people were really excited about those who were ready to see PPG gone. I think they were excited to see what we have, and those who were sad to see it leave. We're keeping, I think, some of the most important features of being able to give kids feedback by standard in our reassessment practice. So thank you for the opportunity to put this together.
I would like to say thank you, a very deep thank you to Dr. Carson for taking on all of this work that you have done since November. I appreciate that you sought out you sought out parent input, you sought out board member input, teacher input, and then from that continued to work and not just said, okay, I got it all, I can do it. I appreciate that you have been very, very clear in questions that have been sent to you. And I feel as though this is a marriage of things that will work a little bit better in regards to understanding for students and parents, as well as provide information that, a deeper dive information that, some parents and students may be looking for, as well as being able to look at how are our students doing an IER, how are our students doing an SAT, and here's where they are. So we're collecting that information too as well. So I will be voting yes for the middle school and the high school proposal this evening. And I would say that I trust that, as you indicated, that each couple of months that teachers are looking at, all the different nuances and puzzle pieces, and that communication will continue.
I'd like to say thank you as well to Mr. Carson and all the teachers and parents and everybody who took a lot of time to dig into this. It's been far more information than I ever thought I would have to learn. And it's been a process, but I think a good process. And I know a lot of work went into it. So thank you.
I like the fact that we gave both a broad opportunity for participation, that being the survey, that we included students and parents and teachers. So broadly, you could choose to participate or not. And then by invitation or in some cases by volunteering, parents, students, or staff became involved in a very fluid conversation. I think it was very difficult to allow it to be as fluid as it was. And I appreciate that because it's no doubt strikes panic and fear in the heart of many who are thinking it's fast approaching. And so the fluidity that was necessary was maintained throughout. And I know I really appreciate that we've had individual and collective meetings with you as well as conversations. And that was not without a great deal of work on the part of everyone that's been involved. And I think it shows. And so thanks.
Yeah, I would just say really quickly, I think this is an example of why things can be done well and how we do things well. I mean, I think this is a collaborative effort from a lot of people, led by Dave, who I'm sure had much trepidation from the start and all the way till today. That's how I was him too. And I think it's been a long journey for him, but I also think for the district, it shows with a collaborative effort with all people trying to get something close to what everybody wants. And it's not going to be exactly what everybody wants. That's always going to be very difficult to achieve. But the intent is to get what we think is in the best interest of kids. And looking at their achievement where parents and teachers and the community can help them in their learning process. And I think this goes to show when we all work together, I think it comes as a positive result. And I think Dave ought to be very proud of the fact that we got to this point and that we have a system that everybody may not be in love with, but I think a lot of them will look at it and say, it's really not that bad. So thank you.
I just want to echo Mr. Zickert's points there, what he made, but also, thank Dr. Carson and his team and administrators as well. It took a lot of listening, right? It took a lot of listening from the community, it took a lot of listening from the PBG side to the non-PBG side, and to marriage both of these together, and ultimately came to a solution. Thank you, Dr. Carson, that appears to be a good marriage of both. And so I'm fairly satisfied and pleased with it, pleased with the outcome. And again, it took a lot of work. It took a lot of work from listening to a lot of folks and kind of getting there. So thank you for your work on this.
You did a nice job, Dave. I think you did it in spite of the board. But that just sort of recognizes you for extra kudos. There's the old saying that no one wants to see laws or sausage being made, and I'll add that grading policy to that old saw. I think this board is very functional and does very well when it is performing board tasks, and I think we do a lot less well when we're performing tasks that are better left to administrators, central office, principals, and teachers. I think we did reach a good result, a result that we can all live with, as Mr. Zickert put it, not too bad. That's not my goal ever, but I do think we reached a good result, probably solely due to Dr. Carson's efforts. I would have liked to have seen the board start with a grading philosophy And then leaving the details of coming up with the best way to implement that philosophy to our administrators, to our staff, to our teachers, with input from our board and our staff. I would have liked to have seen this process not take up the entire year. I would have liked to have seen our administration know that they were going to come into the meeting tonight with a proposal that the board was going to approve. So thank you, Dr. Carson. You did a very, very good job, and I very much appreciate your efforts.
Thank you for your opinion, Mrs. Maybell. Mrs. Hauk, do you have anything?
I know, now I feel pressure. You all talked. But everyone said everything I would say. Thank you,
So
Dave.
ditto.
I kept thinking we were gonna say marriage of convenience. I'm glad that didn't happen. No, I think you did an awesome job. I appreciated hearing PPG side and traditional grading sides and coming to, something that we can all agree on. And especially thank you from a lot of the staff that contacted me. And I think that was really good to hear their perspective on things and know that they were on board with this too. So I know it was a ton of work. I know we're a pain in the butt sometimes. So thank you so much, Dave.
Yeah, and I wonder when that's when, I talked a long time to Dave today, and I think if you ask Dr. Carson, maybe I mischaracterized what I really thought. I apologize for that. I don't look at this as a just okay system. I think it's pretty good. And I think Dr. Carson, for the most part, agreed with me on that concept this morning. So I don't think it's just an average one. I think it's better than average. So I'll let it go at that.
Thank you, Mr. Zickert and Mrs. Hauk. Do we have anything else? Okay, we have a motion on the floor to approve the grading system for middle school as recommended. Roll call, please.
Ms. Mayville,
Aye.
Mr. Zickert,
Aye.
Mr. Herrera,
Aye.
Mrs. Whitcomb,
Aye.
Mrs. Hauk,
Aye.
Mr. Booker.
Aye.
Mrs. Reed Nemick.
Aye. Motion passes 7-0. Do I have a motion regarding the grading system recommendation for high school?
I move to approve the high school grading proposal as presented.
Second.
That's a tie.
I don't get. You can certainly give it to Lori. Is there extra
Rock,
pay
paper, scissors?
involved?
That's what I.
The extra zero.
Member Mayville made the motion and member Herrera seconded the motion to approve the grading system for high school at the high school grading system proposal as presented. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Ms. Mayville,
Aye.
Mr. Herrera,
Aye.
Mr. Zickert,
Aye.
Mrs. Whitcomb,
Aye.
Mr. Booker.
Aye.
Mrs. Hauk.
Aye.
Mrs. Reed Nemick.
Aye. Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next is a resolution to request waiver modification, allowing the district to provide 3 full days of school improvement and service activities instead of 6 half days. Do I have a motion entertaining that?
Oh, excuse me.
I make a motion to approve the resolution to continue, well, I guess we'll just read it. So I get it. To request waiver modification allowing the district to provide 3 full days of school improvement and in-service activities instead of 6 half days as presented and recommended by business service, or I'm sorry, the curriculum committee.
Second.
Member Whitcomb made the motion and member Mayville seconded the motion to approve the resolution to request a waiver modification, allowing the district to provide 3 full days of school improvement in-service activities instead of 6 half days as presented from the curriculum committee. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Whitcomb.
Aye.
Ms. Mayville.
Aye.
Mr. Zickert,
Aye.
Mr. Booker.
Aye.
Mr. Herrera.
Aye.
Mrs. Hauk.
Aye.
Mrs. Reed Nemick.
Aye. Motion passes 7-0. Do I have a motion regarding the letter of intent for the letter of intent to contract for services with Savas Learning?
I move to approve the letter of intent to contract for services with Savas Learning.
Second.
Member Mayville made a motion and member Hauk seconded the motion to approve the letter of intent to contract for services with Savas Learning as presented. Any discussion?
Yeah, I have some concerns about exactly how we landed on the 7-day increase in price. Now, it probably isn't truly reflective of 7 days perhaps, but it was presented at Business Services at $175,000. And then now we got some discounting, but a week later, it was $70,000 higher related to inflation and fuel costs. That's a 40% increase in cost. I'm wondering two things. Number one, what does fuel costs have to do with it? I mean, I guess I'm just trying to figure that one out. And secondly, how bindable is this quote if in the span of a week, it increased by 40% or $70,000? Now, it did get discounted some, so it's not the full $70,000 in their request, but I would be leaning toward voting no, based on the fact that this is just a letter of intent, and I would worry that the actual contract would come back again with some, significant jump again. So I don't know if someone could speak to.
So if there was an additional, you're gonna have to approve the contract still as a board. So this letter of intent is meant to allow them to hire and start training someone that would provide the services. So the formal contract would still come to you.
In the letter, it says notwithstanding our inability to provide a purchase order at this time, by this letter, the district confirms its order for the items set forth in this letter. And it actually indicates the partnership and the $214,000.
Mhm.
So how would we be able to?
I'm just reading that in the description from Dr. Bauman, she has that this approval of a letter would allow them not only to begin the training, would allow them to begin their training before a formal contract is submitted. So it is very much a binding document. They're asking for this ahead of providing a contract so they can begin their preparations.
Yeah, so I read this as it's a binding purchase order, whether they have a contract or that. I mean, a contract would follow, but
Right.
that this would bind us to that contract no matter what it said.
Right, and the reason I was mentioning that was just if we're worried that the price is going to increase.
Well, no, I mean, I'm saying, yes, I do. I am worried that the price would increase. I'm also concerned about the fact that it's delivered as a letter of intent, but in fact, without value or benefit of seeing the contract in its entirety, we're obligating ourselves to a contract.
It looks like we're obligating ourselves to pay for any services that they provide. And if we don't appropriate the funds for the whole contract, then they'll suspend their obligation to perform the remainder of the contract.
And at what cost are those provided services paid out? That's right. So do we know, let's just say they spent 60 days training, and I don't know when the contract would come back to us. But at what rate would we pay for those to date provided services?
Doesn't the letter?
Where is the
doesn't
contract?
stipulate that?
We don't have the contract yet. We have the letter of intent. We don't have the contract.
So at curriculum committee, this was discussed that Savas has been in with an individual that came in and has done professional development. So not necessarily teaching in the classroom, but professional development for teachers at the math level. That was my understanding is that the same person would be coming back. Is that correct?
I don't think the same person's not coming back. That's partially why we're
Yeah.
doing that.
They need to hire someone. That's the reason why they don't want to recruitment and hiring process.
It's just a really substantial jump. in a short period of time. And again, I don't know how long we had the letter of intent, so I don't want to expect, I don't want to, definitively say that it was only 7 days, but that's A, a significant jump. B, I don't see the amount we would pay for any amount of services they did if it didn't get approved. We could get the contract and have other issues with it, and in essence, we'd still be on the hook for an amount of money that is unspecified. So that I guess that would be my only question.
There was discussion at the meeting about it, specifically. I mean, pros and cons, both ways. I mean, it was a discussion. Originally, it was on the consent agenda item. It was a consent agenda item. I asked Dr. Weisman to move it to roll call because I didn't want, I knew the other ones were recurring contracts that we've used before, like NWA, for example. Ones like that, not the theater folk one, but ones like that. There really weren't any questions on at all. So I moved it there because I didn't want to, or I asked Dr. Weisman to move it. He agreed that we'd move it there so there could be board discussion on that, where it wouldn't detract from approving the other ones in the consent agenda. So that was one of the reasons why I was moving to roll call.
And this was discussed when we were doing the rough draft agenda, in our rough draft agenda meeting. So when Matt says he asked to move to roll call, that was the discussion that we all had at the time that we were drafting the agenda.
That was true, yes.
So we don't know we haven't had a preview of the full contract, correct? Okay, and we don't know what the cost of services would be for services rendered if we didn't approve a contract.
Depends on the services they've provided.
Right, we don't have a billable agreement that says if we do this, it's this much, or we don't know how much we're obligated for if we don't get to a contract. Is that fair to say? Okay.
I think probably fair market value of the services they've provided as at that time would be my.
And Matt, did the committee recommend we approve this?
Yeah, what,
tonight?
Matt, that was my question.
I would say the committee was pretty divided. I think there were a lot of questions on it, but some of the people didn't I mean, when you're talking to people, 175, that was 175 back then. $175,000 a lot of money. They were explained to what we were getting out of it, and to be candid, I mean, I will be candid, is that the 175,000 was looked upon as, at that time, as a person. And they wanted to know, some of the people in the committee wanted to, not everybody, but a few wanted to know that would be the second highest paid person in the district at 175,000 if it was just a person. So that was some of the trepidation from a couple of people on the committee. And there were people that thought it was, part of the Ester thing, that it wasn't a bad thing. But there really, outside of Dr. Bauman, there really wasn't anybody on the committee, I think, who personally, from what I remember, and Ms. Reed-Nimmick could correct me if I'm wrong, that personally had used it that could speak to how much wonderful things had happened because of that. And I think that was, that might have been beneficial too.
Yeah. So the contract does say, to the extent that the company has provided any professional services, the district acknowledges it will be invoiced and must pay for the value of such services. So there is a generic clause in there. I think the company, when providing this, is probably assuming that we do want to continue services because we're in the second year of what was communicated as a 2-year partnership to them initially.
If I could add, the intent is to have someone for next year, and we have someone already in this position that will be with the student in the school year. So 60 days from now would be May 21st. I mean, we'd still be using the current coach, so there would be no professional services provided by this person in that 60-day window.
But they may be training somebody if they find somebody, right? Like
They could-
that's
they could
Savas
be training.
themselves.
I don't know
Could
if
be
that would
training if they
qualify
hire
as
somebody.
Professional service to train their own employee. They run the bus.
Well, that's the reason they want the letter of intent before they do that, because it seems as though they'd be charging that, which I'm not saying is unreasonable, but they'd be charging that.
So I do remember some discussion at the committee level. Mr. Zickert is correct. I don't believe that there was an elementary level teacher that was available at the curriculum committee. Middle school and high school, I believe, was there. and one of the comments from high school teacher was, anytime you can get somebody in the classroom to provide some additional information, whether it be instructional coaches, whether it be, professional development from an outside entity on things that they haven't been trained on before. And I believe, this teacher said, I haven't been in school in a while, like I don't know everything. So when somebody comes in and can be an expert, like I don't have to go hunt down things myself. And so they said they couldn't speak to the elementary, but they said at the high school level that they would welcome something like that. There was also conversation that next month there would be a presentation with in curriculum committee, or the next time curriculum committee met, a presentation of kind of where our students are at in the math, kind of in math proficiency in general, and Sarah Brunner was going to present that. So we don't have any information on that, but that is supposed to be coming next month at the curriculum committee. Okay, roll call, please.
Ms. Mayville.
Aye.
Mrs. Hauk.
Aye.
Mr. Herrera.
Aye.
Mr. Zickert.
No.
Mrs. Whitcomb.
No,
Mr. Booker.
No.
Mrs. Reed Nemick.
No. Motion fails.
Can you give some direction to Dr. Bauman? Is the message that she should see here that we don't want to continue the partnership, or what's the message I need to convey to her right now?
I would say find out what the contract says.
For me, more
So-
information.
A copy of the contract?
So, yeah, so we know what the contract says in regards to what money, would be expended from that
Okay.
time. So instead of just a letter of intent, possibly just the contract.
Okay. That's helpful.
That would be my recommendation, but please chime in, board members.
I'm confused why we brought it forward, I guess.
I agree. It sounds like there was indecision at the committee.
Yeah,
That-
I mean, I
that,
don't.
To me, if they're not
get it.
as resoundingly for it, I think, and we don't have all the information, that's
but
why.
maybe we will. Maybe
why I
we will
voted
next
no.
month. Maybe they'll have more. So if they do seek to bring it back, either the full contract, and I would say that would be great, as opposed to a letter of intent. If we are bound with just a letter of intent, because that's what they want before executing a contract, I would like to know what those professional services would be billed at. And then secondly, why such a significant increase?
Yeah, that's. for sure.
Why was there again, they discounted it from 245 to 214, well, 215, 214, 995. But that's a big jump from 175. 175 was a lot. So, maybe some specifics about how we got, what are those
Thank you, that helps.
increases?
Okay, next, do I have a motion regarding the non-reemployment resolution of part-time temporary teachers effective the end of the 21-22 school year?
I move to approve the non-reemployment resolution of part-time temporary teachers effective the end of 21-22 school year.
Second.
Member Mayville made the motion and Member Zickert seconded the motion to approve the non-reemployment resolution of part-time temporary teachers effective the end of the 21-22 school year. It's presented. Discussion? Roll call, please.
Ms. Mayville.
Aye.
Mr. Zickert.
Aye.
Mr. Herrera.
Aye.
Mrs. Hauk.
Aye.
Mr. Booker.
Aye.
Mrs. Whitcomb.
Aye.
Mrs. Reed Nemick.
Aye. Motion passes 7-0. Do I have a motion regarding the non-reemployment resolution of full-time temporary teachers effective the end of the 21-22 school year?
I move to approve the non-reemployment resolution of full-time temporary teachers effective the end of the 21-22 school year.
Second.
Second.
Member Mayville made the motion and Member Booker seconded the motion to approve the non-reemployment resolution of full-time temporary teachers effective the end of the 21-22 school year as presented. Any discussion?
I was just going to say on the part-time as well as the full-time, I reached out to Dr. Weisman some time back, the explanation, because as a newer board member, I'll be honest, I didn't get it. I didn't really understand so I understand this is something that will happen annually. This happens with regularity. So it was beneficial to get that insight and information before the meeting, so it's not to have to drag everybody through it. So thank you for that.
Roll call, please.
Ms. Mayville.
Aye.
Mr. Booker.
Aye.
Mrs. Hauk.
Aye.
Mr. Herrera.
Aye.
Mrs. Whitcomb.
Aye.
Mr. Zickert.
Aye.
Mrs. Reed Nemick.
Aye. Motion passes 7-0. Do I have a motion regarding reduction in force resolution and notice?
I move to approve the reduction in force resolution and notice as presented.
Oh, second, sorry. I thought we were just waiting to vote.
Member Mayville made the motion and Member Whitcomb seconded the motion to approve the reduction in force resolution and notice as presented. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Ms. Mayville.
Aye.
Mrs. Whitcomb.
Aye.
Mr. Herrera.
Aye.
Mrs. Hauk.
Aye.
Mr. Zickert.
Aye.
Mr. Booker.
Aye.
Mrs. Reed Nemick.
Aye. Motion passes 7-0. Number 10 has been, the memorandum of understanding for paid administrative leave has been moved to board discussion. Next. Do I have a motion regarding 9-month administrative contract?
Move to approve the 9-month administrative contract as presented.
Second.
Member Mayville made a motion and Member Herrera seconded the motion to approve the 9-month administrator contract, employment contract as presented. Discussion.
Can I jump in here? So we did get some late recommendation from the attorney on the new language. The clause, there is a notice clause, which is section 4. And he was recommending that the second, that all but the first sentence in section 4 be struck and replaced with the board shall attempt to provide the administrator or director notice by April 1st of whether a new employment agreement will be offered for the following school year. If such notice is not provided, however, this agreement shall not be automatically extended or renewed and shall still expire on the date set forth above.
Is that same recommendation going to be made for
For
all
all,
of
it
them?
would be for all of
So
them.
is this, and I'm not saying we shouldn't vote on it, but that sounds like we have to make a lot of amendments because we can't, if we vote to approve it as presented, we're approving the language as it exists. Is it possible for these, I don't know, to come back?
Yeah, if you want
with-
to.
Or I would be happy to withdraw my motion and if, who seconded the motion?
Mr. Herrera.
Mr. Herrera, would you withdraw your second? And then I would make a new motion to approve the 9-month contract with the amendments as detailed by Dr. Weisman, provided by legal counsel. Somebody should probably second that.
Second.
Member Mayville withdrew her original motion to approve the 9-month administrator employment contract as presented. And Mr. Herrera withdrew his second of that motion. Member Mayville moved to approve the 9-month administrator contract to include language as
detailed by Dr. Weisman, that was provided by legal counsel.
detailed by Dr. Weisman and presented and provided by legal counsel.
I apologize for the late notice. We did get a good recommendation from board member to make sure we had legal review it and hadn't done that, so that's my fault. Yes.
And is that the only change to, we're discussing the 9-month contract, is that the
Yes.
only change to the 9-month contract?
So I guess I have a question about if we're approving the 9-month contract, the template, right?
Mhm.
It still indicates no number of days. Would we not be approving the template with a number of days for a 9-month contract?
You could approve it. We would have to re-approve the template every year because the number of days shifts by 1 or 2 depending on when holidays fall every year. So some years it's for 12-month employee, it might be 259, 260, or 261, for example.
Does it change for 9-month employees?
I think it doesn't change for 9-month employees because they're the same as the teacher contract. I think that's the only one.
So 10, 11, and 12 change
They can change depending on.
or could
when
change,
holidays,
okay, but not 9 months.
I believe so, yeah.
My 9-month change in leap years.
I don't think the 9-month changes because, because it's the same number of days that the teachers work and the teacher contract has specified by a certain number of days. To be honest, I don't understand it, but like every year when we sit down and number out the calendars, they change somehow.
And so those not being in the contracts, what would be a 9, a 10, and 11? Do you have that?
I do have that. So this past year, the 10-month contracts were 211 days. The 11-month contracts were 221 days. The 9-month contracts were 180 days. 10, let's see, what did I give this for? 9, 10,
You gave
11.
us 9, 10, 11.
So the 12-month, contracts would be last year were 261 days.
That fluctuates by 1 or 2 days.
That fluctuates by, all those fluctuate by 1 or 2 days. And then most likely we'll recommend that the high school or the 12-month principal be 250-ish days.
So that was just a question for me. It may not be an issue for anybody else, and maybe it's fine to leave it. I was just asking the question about that, because I know we're still on the 9 months, so. Although the Word document at the top says 9, 10, and 11-month administrator, but right now we're just voting on a 9-month.
Right, they're all, the 9, 10, 11-month templates are the same.
Got it. Okay.
And then under sick leave, we've changed to the maximum number of days the Illinois teacher retirement system will recognize
Correct,
instead of just whatever system that individual is in.
correct.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor to approve the 9-month administrator employment contract template as detailed, language as detailed by Dr. Weisman and provided by board attorney. Roll call, please.
Ms. Mayville.
Aye.
Mr. Herrera.
Aye.
Mr. Zickert.
Aye.
Mr. Booker.
Aye.
Mrs. Hauk.
Aye.
Mrs. Whitcomb.
Aye.
Mrs. Reed Nemick.
Aye. Motion passes 7-0. I'm gonna see if I can say this correctly.
Sure.
Do Do I have a motion to approve the 10-month administrator employment contract template? The template as detailed by Dr. Weistman and provided language by the board attorney.
I'll make that motion.
Second,
Member Mayville made the motion and Member Whitcomb seconded the motion to approve the 10-month administrator employment contract. Language as detailed by Dr. Weistman and provided by board attorney. Any discussion?
Yeah, just a real quick question. I know the 10-month and 11-month, just from a numerical point of view, and even if we by 1 or 2 days based on the year, they're only 10 days apart, which is 2 weeks. So from my way of looking at it, is the 10-month in equity, you get ripped off a little to the 11th month because you're getting paid more. Obviously, you should, at least I'm pretty sure they are being paid more as 11 months when you only work at 2 more weeks as a 10. It just, I mean, I guess I'm wondering, traditionally 10-month contracts used to be 200 days, roughly. So what was the impetus for making it 211?
Was that, I don't know if that's been something that was changed. I don't know if we've changed any of the contract lengths since I got in here, Matt. Did that happen before I got here?
I know it used to be 200 because they worked 2 weeks before and 2 weeks after. That was the deal for it. And 10 months were usually all the APs,
Right,
typically,
right.
and the elementary principal.
Yeah.
So they would get 2 weeks before, 2 weeks after.
Yeah, I don't know why those dates were changed. We do, like, I know we have asked a couple of the high school assistant principals to move to an 11-month contract. So they have more days to work on the scheduling. But to be honest, this is why we traditionally have done salaries based on a day rate, because everybody works a different amount of days, and it's a little easier to tell whether it's fair or not. Because it's not truly a 10-month or an 11-month contract. They're just used to differentiate the number of days they work. I don't know. I'd have to come back and try to figure that out, Mr. Zickert.
I was just curious because I mean, I knew there was an 11. I mean, the 11-month high school assistant principals used to be the schedule, as you indicated before. They used to be the ones that did the schedule, and then when they moved it to the central office for an interesting reason, they eliminated those at the high school, and then they came back now, which I don't think is a bad thing. But I was just curious because I didn't.
Yeah,
that was what I just didn't understand.
That's fair.
No, to reiterate, these don't have specific days. The days will be added.
Correct,
when
later.
they are individually approved in May.
Yes,
but everyone within a 10-month contract tier will have the same number of days worked.
correct,
211, 212, 210, whatever it is.
correct.
Okay, any other questions? Roll call, please.
Ms. Mayville,
Aye.
Mrs. Whitcomb,
Aye.
Mrs. Hauk.
Aye.
Mr. Herrera.
Aye.
Mr. Booker.
Aye.
Mr. Zickert.
Aye.
Mrs. Reed Nemick.
Aye. Motion passes 7-0. Do I have a motion to approve the 11-month administrator employment contract as detailed by contract language as detailed by Dr. Weistman and provided by board attorney?
Make that motion.
Second.
Member Mayville made the motion and Member Herrera seconded the motion to approve the 11-month administrator employment contract language as detailed by Dr. Weistman and provided by the board attorney. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Ms. Mayville.
Aye.
Mr. Herrera.
Aye.
Mrs. Whitcomb.
Aye.
Mr. Booker.
Aye.
Mrs. Hauk.
Aye.
Mr. Zickert.
Aye.
Mrs. Reed Nemick.
Aye. Motion passes 7-0. Next is 12-month principal administrative contract. Do I have a motion regarding a motion to approve the 12-month principal administrator contract language as provided, as detailed by Dr. Weisman and provided by board attorney?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Member Mayville made a motion and member Haupt seconded the motion to approve the 12-month principal administrator employment language as detailed by Dr. Weisman and provided by the board attorney. Discussion?
The only difference between this one and the next one, the number of days.
Yes, that will be the only difference.
Okay. So for me, I'll be honest about it. I know I'm gonna take a couple hits on this one, but I think they all ought to be the same. I think that that 10 days less than this year and 5 days less than even we come to the flex day from the year before. So for me, that's substantial. So that's just my one opinion.
Yeah, I concur. It's even, it's as you say, 5 and in this case 11. At the 261 less than, and I think that it would fall under the 12-month and don't see the need to have a separate and standalone contract with fewer days worked.
Good.
And principals are considered 12-month
High school principals.
high school,
Yes,
which is what the motion was made for 12-month principals. So high schools are the only 12-month principal.
correct.
Okay. Roll call, please.
Ms. Mayville.
Aye.
Mrs. Haupt.
Aye.
Mr. Booker.
Aye.
Mrs. Whitcomb.
No,
Mr. Herrera.
Aye.
Mr. Zickert.
No,
Mrs. Renemick.
No. Motion passes 4-3. Do I have a motion regarding the approval of 12-month administrator employment contract language as detailed by Dr. Weisman and provided by the board attorney?
I move to approve the 12-month administrative contract as detailed by Dr. Weisman with the amendments provided by the board attorney.
second.
Member Mayville made a motion and member Haupt seconded the motion to approve the 12-month administrative employment contract as detailed by Dr. Weisman and provided by the board attorney. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Ms. Mayville.
Aye.
Mrs. Haupt.
Aye.
Mr. Booker.
Aye.
Mr. Herrera.
Aye.
Mrs. Whitcomb.
Aye,
Mr. Zickert.
aye.
Mrs. Renemick.
Aye. Motion passes 7-0. We have a motion regarding the 12-month IMRF administrative. There's two of them.
Hmm.
So there's administrator and there's director.
Correct. We do have a certified administrator who pays into IMRF.
Okay. Do I have a motion to approve the 12-month IMRF administrator employment contract language?
This is all, yep, they're all the same. Yep.
As detailed by Dr. Weisman and language provided by the board attorney.
I'll make the motion to approve the 12-month IMRF administrative contract as detailed by Dr. Weisman with the amendments provided by the board attorney.
Second.
Member Mayville made the motion and member Herrera seconded the motion to approve the 12-month IMRF administrator contract language as detailed by Dr. Weisman and amendments provided by the board attorney. Discussion?
So I wanted to ask a question under sick leave, section 7. If there's a change to align this contract with that of the last section saying that the number of days the Illinois teacher retirement system will recognize for additional service credit. Is there any issue with IMRF honoring or accepting the number of days that would be accrued, being that they don't accept as much?
Yeah, they won't accept it. So the recognition there is just for us. They can accumulate that for us, but when we turn it into IMRF, they will only accept, they'll only accept half, up to 1 year. So they won't have that for retirement recognition or early retirement purposes, but they could use that internally here.
I.e. a payout at the end.
Correct. Well, I don't think we don't pay them out. It's really just like if they became ill, they could use up to 2 years for us. But when they retire, if they haven't used those 2 years, IMRF will only accept up to a year of that. Did I get that right, Ms. Armstrong?
It's basically letting them accumulate it for FMLA purposes. And then when they retire,
They forfeited
years
it.
for
Forfeited that
credit
year.
and it's forfeited. You don't pay out sick time.
Right.
That's unfortunate. I mean, like, but you're saying for the purposes of FMLA, in the event of a catastrophic illness, then they would be able
They'd
to
have
have.
up to 2 years.
Yeah, got it, okay.
Any other questions?
Excuse me.
Roll call, please.
Ms. Mayville. Aye. Mr. Herrera.
Aye.
Mr. Booker.
Aye.
Mrs. Whitcomb.
Aye.
Mr. Zickert. Mrs. Hauk.
Aye.
Mrs. Reed Nemick.
Aye. Motion passes 7-0. Do I have a motion to approve the 12-month IMRF Director Employment Contract with language as detailed by Dr. Weisman and amendments as provided by Board Attorney?
I'll move to approve the 12-month IMRF director contract as detailed by Dr. Weisman with the amendments as suggested by Board Attorney.
Second.
Member Mayville made the motion and Member Help seconded the motion to approve the 12-month IMRF Director Employment Contract as detailed by Dr. Weisman from amendments as provided by the Board Attorney. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Ms. Mayville.
Aye.
Mrs. Hauk.
Aye.
Mr. Herrera.
Aye.
Mrs. Whitcomb.
Aye.
Mr. Booker.
Aye.
Mr. Zickert.
Aye.
Mrs. Reed Nemick.
Aye. Motion passes 7-0. Do I have a motion regarding administrative salaries for the 22-23 school year?
I'd move to approve administrative salaries for the 22-23 school year as presented.
Hang on, we're not approving the salaries. Wait, right? This is, I thought this was about an increase
It's the
to.
dollar amount.
It's the dollar amount, the lump sum dollar amount.
So your motion is to approve the dollar amount as recommended.
Yes.
Second.
Member Mayville made the motion and Member Herrera seconded the motion to approve the $145,000 increase to the current administrative salary budget for the 22-23 school year as presented. Discussion?
Yeah, I guess I'm just wondering, it's a very substantial jump over last year. And I guess I'm just looking for a little more input as to why we think, or what led you to your request? Last year being $104,046 and.
So this is about a 3.5% raise for the administrators.
But it's a 40% raise compared to last year's raise. Right.
I don't know what last year says. So what I did is I looked at the salaries from last year and then built in about a 3.5% raise.
Is that about what the percentage raise we gave last year overall was?
Yeah, usually we're shooting somewhere between a 3.3 and a 3.7.
Let's see. This is what you provided us this year that we voted on.
Yeah, that's what you ended up approving.
Mhm.
I would imagine that.
And then there was some additions there.
Yeah, I don't know what the final Last year was,
But year over year, this is 3.5.
year over year, this is 3.5, yep. So we had like A, B, C, D,
Yeah, this was G. That's what we approved.
right.
Yeah.
So generally I do ask for about a 3.5% raise for administrators.
It indicates further that there's approximately 43 administrators. When I look at things from last year and I compare them, we're at 40, and I'm trying to determine, were there three more administrators? Did I miss it somewhere? Maybe I did. I just went based on the information we could see from last year.
It's just one thing that I don't know exactly what list you're looking at. There might have been some unfilled positions that we didn't specifically address in raises last year. I don't know.
I believe there was one dean position that we
Sure,
didn't
that
address
could
in
be
rates last year.
Pam and I just went through the list and counted on our phone roster how many administrators there are.
So $145,000 increase. I know last year there were some increases that were atypical
Mhm.
for some of our administrators. And so those atypical raises, in my mind, I would not look at to add those in and add on a 3.3 on top of the total. I would look at what the raises were before we made any adjustments.
Okay. I didn't do that. Obviously, I just took last year's overall, or our current year's compensation, what people are currently making, and built in a 3.5. It's about a 3.5% raise for next year.
To the extent we made atypical raises last year, would those be like market adjustment raises? For instance, I know we've done one of those for Tyler Bell in the past when it became apparent that he was significantly undercompensated compared to other IT directors. I don't remember if we did that last year, but is that what you were thinking of?
No, I was thinking in regards to the adjustments that had to be made to keep us current with the IRS requirements for self-insured health insurance programs.
Yeah, I don't think I took those into account, like when I'm looking at the rate, so.
I blocked that out of my head. Was that? Can you remind me what that was? What?
The total?
No,
Or what
what level of administrators are subject to
Assistant
that?
superintendent.
Okay,
It was in regards to the 5 highest paid administrators within the district. Because within the IRS requirements for a self-insured health insurance program, to stay current with the requirements to qualify for the IRS requirements to stay self-insured and not lose that designation with the IRS, you cannot pay different amounts of insurance premium benefit to the 5 highest paid individuals.
and they had different amounts because, for instance, some of them elected family and some of them elected
Correct.
just
Correct.
sole or spouse or,
Correct.
But it was being entirely paid by the district.
and. Okay,
So the total compensation last year, if I take the total compensation from last year, even if I pull out the additional monies that were provided for those benefits in a different way, because we were always paying for those benefits, I'm asking for $145,000, which is a little more than 3.5, about almost 3.6% raise for the administrators.
Yeah, I think my only issue is not so much with it is a little with the 3.6. It's not with the 3.6 in itself. It's the fact that we're bargaining with 2 significant unions coming up, the teachers and the paras, for sure. And they're going to look at whatever we give administrators, and some of their some of their bargaining points are going to be what we gave for administrative raises the last couple of years. And some of them are gonna view them as better than other groups. So they're also gonna look at how do we compare with the area in that group and how do they compare with the area in that group. So I think those are all issues we have to be careful of when we look at these things.
Yeah, so how much is a step again?
3-3.
3. So if as a point of reference, if the teachers just get a step, we play that scenario out, then they will get a 3.3% raise next year. If you negotiate any type of addition to the base, they will get more than a 3.3% raise. So it seems pretty, I took that into consideration and I thought this was a decent request.
Well, I look
Yeah, I
at,
think,
oh,
I
sorry.
think they're gonna look at it and say that, how are we compared? I mean, I think we are pretty good in some areas compared to the area around. But I think people like the paras and the custodial staff and clerical people may not quite look at that in the same way. So I know there's a pool of money. I know the 140,000 isn't that big in itself because it's for a small group of people. And I guess my point of view is that I get that we can afford that without any problem. It's not a big deal.
Yeah,
But I hate using that when we say it's more expensive to give parents or teachers or whoever else more money, because there's a lot more of them.
Yeah. Well, and it's substantial. If we look at the difference year over year, 104, call it 105,000, we take out the 23,000 plus, that was the atypical raises that needed to occur. You know, that puts us down closer to the $82,000 mark, and this year it's 145.
So what's 3.5 on 82?
That I don't know. I'm not gonna pretend I could do that.
So not including the increases that had to be made to specific administrators. Last year, we approved proposal G, which is what which is what we approved and that, or which is what we decided on and then added on the additional for specific administrators.
So 104,
So
got
104.
it. Not take away the 23.
46.
104 plus the 23, or do we have to take, so if I
No,
misspoke?
it would be 104 plus the 20.
Got it, okay, so then it is just 104, not to take that additional amount out, so, but it was 104 last year versus the recommendation this year for.
Correct, and
Okay,
I'm
got it,
referring,
okay.
I'm referring to the information
Okay.
that was shared to us.
Right, so that is what
Back
you
in July.
approved. That's not what I asked for. So and some of our administrators got a 1% raise last year. So I don't think that's the position that we want to be in. So I think that in order to stay competitive, we need to be giving our administrators, we need to be giving all of our staff more than a 1% raise.
Well,
year
we're
over
not
year.
telling you that you have to give them a 1% raise. It's an amount of money that is divided amongst.
I know, I'm just saying, if we look at last year and we keep comparing ourselves to last year, the situation we were in last year with a 2% overall something that you finally
2.5.
approved, is that some people got a 1% raise,
And some people got
Six
a lot
people
higher
got
than
a
that.
1,
right?
13 got a 2, 12 got a 3.
Yep.
8 got a.
So I think
4,
you need to be giving
got a
more
6.
people, I don't think you should be giving anybody a 1% raise or a 2% raise. I think you should give your administrators at least on average as much as you're giving the teachers. And to just provide a step is 3.3%. I'm asking for just slightly over a step, which the teachers will get, plus any addition to the base.
I just think though that argument's fine, but as I've reiterated more than once is we have people, and I know I don't want this to get construed, so I won't say the word overpaid because I never said it the first time. But we do have people that are getting compensated higher than anybody in the area, in our immediate area around here. So giving them a 1% raise at that time, when you're making more than everybody else is anyway, I don't think it's a terrible thing. Because there's a lot of other people in districts surrounding us, whether it be Harlem, whether it be Rockford, whether it be Freeport, who are making, in some cases, significantly less than our employees are now with if we didn't do anything, which I don't think it's fair either.
I think Dr. Weisman provided us with salary comps.
Yeah, I provide, so the only employees that are receiving more than everybody in our region are the middle school principals who are maybe $1,000 more than the next middle school principals, but we aren't the top paying administrative school district.
If you use Huntley in places out like that.
If I
you're
use
right.
the list I have is Woodstock, Huntley, Harlem, Rockford, North Boone, Kinnickinnick, and Hononegah.
And I would argue outside of Huntley and Woodstock, we're at the top.
Well, that could be, I do think we maybe
And we
we're
do
using
com-
different lists.
Yeah, we do compete with Huntley and Woodstock. I mean, regardless, I mean, come on, we're looking at a cost of living increase last year. It was like 6.9%. We're already looking at cost of living increases this year that are on track to be at least that much. I mean, like Dr. Weisman said, no one thinks we're gonna get out of negotiations, giving our teachers half a step or something. I don't, there is a really interesting sort of, I don't know what, well, anyway. Let's just, either we're gonna approve this amount of money or we're not. Let's just get on with it.
I'm fine with that, yeah.
Yeah, it's fair. Seems fair, especially with the cost of living increases, inflation. I mean, 3.5, that's what we're asking for, right? And the teachers are gonna get a step of 3.3 or 3.6, whatever we're asking, no, 3.3.
If you're not at the top of the teachers or the teachers.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Come
we
on.
have a motion on the floor to approve $145,000 for an increase to administrative salary budget for the 22-23 school year as presented. Roll call, please.
Ms. Mayville.
Aye.
Mr. Herrera,
Aye.
Mrs. Whitcomb,
No,
Mr. Zickert,
No,
Mrs. Hauk,
Aye.
Mr. Booker,
No,
Mrs. Reed Nemick,
No. Motion fails. 3-4. Dr. Weisman needs to know what to approve regarding increases. So we will need to revisit this evening. We have a motion regarding the increase to administrative salaries for the 22-23 school year.
And we're looking for another, do you want?
We have to revisit this tonight, otherwise. we
Oh,
won't be
I need
able to
something.
vote anything.
gotcha.
What would you like me to spend? Or what would you like me to budget for?
I'm just getting my phone for a calculator because I'm not, not gonna pretend that I.
In regards to starting with the 104 from last year, a 110 would be almost 4% over that number.
Okay, so that'd be about 2.7%. Yeah, I just
I'm
did,
saying
it, yep.
110%,
So
or
that,
110.
that, for example, would be, I think, 2.7, 2%.
So do I have a motion regarding addition to administrator salary budget for the 22-23 school year?
Could we do 3.3? That's what the teachers will get?
So am I, okay. Can I only say something if it's to make a motion?
No,
Okay, so you came in asking for a dollar amount, so I would make, I can make a dollar amount motion, is that?
Or you can make a percentage.
the way that policy reads, there can be a dollar amount or a percentage, either one.
Just wanted to understand it, okay. Okay, so I make a motion to approve $110,000 increase to the current administrative salary budget for next year.
22-23.
Oh, sorry, 22-23 school year. I was reading all of the as proposed, but I can't say any of that, so.
Here a second.
I'll second.
There's a motion, excuse me, sorry, Mrs. Whitcomb made a motion to approve a $110,000 salary increase to the current administrative salary budget for the 22-23 school year. Mr. Zickert seconded the motion. Any discussion?
Yeah, I know we don't have any control over who gets what, which is fine. I mean, that's not my thing.
You do have control over who gets what.
Well, it would be my hope. I mean, I think and it's not just us, it's a lot of places. So I don't want to make this sound like it's just Belvedere. The assistant principals, I think, overall, comparatively speaking, don't get compensated at the rates that they probably should for the work they do. And I think comparatively speaking, they tend to be lower than other places, including some of the ones you just mentioned, by more than a little. So even though it's my hope that we try and take care of the people with a larger increase that we want to keep, because I think if we're not careful, we're going to find ourselves in the same place other school districts are, is where they're going to have administrators leaving to go back to the classroom because the compensation is at least as good and they get to work one less month. So I really believe that the people that we comparatively are underpaying for whatever reason, and it's not a terrible reason, I just think that those are the people that we have to work to take care of, because if we don't, we're going to lose them.
Any other discussion?
I would agree that we should look at our assistant principal salaries, but I would hope that we would look to take care of all of our people, or we're going to lose them.
We are gonna lose them. And I heard from a lot of administrators last year after we went through this, and I'm sorry, I mean, I don't want anyone to think that they're undervalued, and it's disappointing. I don't think 3.5 was asking too much, so just my opinion though.
Okay, the motion on the floor is to approve a $110,000 increase to the current administrative salary budget for the 22-23 year, as Mrs. Whitcomb stated. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Whitcomb.
Aye.
Mr. Zickert.
Aye.
Mr. Herrera.
No.
Mr. Booker.
Aye.
Mrs. Hauk.
No,
Ms. Mayville.
No,
Mrs. Reed Nemick.
Aye. Motion approved 4-3. Moving on to board discussion. Following items have been added for discussion. Background information has been provided. The board may ask questions or request clarification at this time, starting with administrator compensation model. Dr. Wiesman?
Prior board discussions regarding administrative salaries have brought up the possibility of using a paper for performance model or performance incentive. So I'm just looking for direction from the school board regarding this topic as I put together a proposal for administrative raises.
For me, I'm fine with you not using the proposal that you put together.
Okay.
so Dr. Weisman should just default to what board policy says as far as administrative raises. Is that fair summary direction?
Yeah, I don't have any. I think it could change again, and I don't see taking up your time, energy, or effort to recreate the wheel. That's,
Sure.
at this time.
So prior to last year, we relied heavily on LUDA day rates. We did not end up using those last year. Those takes a while to get those and to put that together. Is that something that you'd like me to use?
I think that'd be good information to provide to us, but it would appear that we'll do whatever we want to do. So you can give us that information and then we'll make the decision.
Any other thoughts?
If any type of comparison is made, I look more heavily on districts and communities that are similar to our district. Harlem is one that is similar. Cal is one that is similar. Sycamore, I think, is fairly similar. Ones within like a 30-mile radius that are similar in composition of number of students and, close demographics, if at all possible. To compare to Rockford is kind of difficult because they are not in line with us in regards to number of students and then
So I appreciate that. The school districts that I provided comp score were Woodstock, Huntley, Harlem, Rockford, Beloit, North Boone, Kinnickinnick, and Hononegah. Would you like me to not use those, use different ones? I hear DeKalb, Sycamore.
I do believe Huntley is quite a bit larger than we are at this point, but I could be wrong. I
Okay,
think they're
let me
closer
check
to
that.
like 10,000 or a little over that students.
Does a principal in all of these districts have essentially the same job duties, responsibilities, et cetera? Does an assistant principal,
Generally, yes.
to a large extent, I would guess that's true. So use your discretion, and if they're, a lot of the Rockford high schools are similar-ish sizes to Belvedere North, and I would imagine that the principals in those districts have largely the same amount of responsibility because that's a larger number of students is adjusted for. They might have an extra AP or two. So to the extent that you think they're comparable, I would be interested in seeing the information.
Yeah, Rockford, I can speak to Rockford. Rockford's about the same. But I will say though that the Rockford principals have 30% more kids in their school than North for sure. And even more than that, 40 or 50% more than BHS. So it is, they're 2,000 person schools, and some of the ones like Harlem are even bigger than 2,000. So you're right, the responsibilities are the same, the basic responsibilities are. Basic responsibilities of a principal in Winnebago are the same too, which has 500 kids. So I think number of kids does matter, having done it. It does make a difference. It's stressful, it's stressful in both cases, but the number of kids does matter.
Those Rockford schools would have more APs, I assume.
They do not. Well, it's close. If you want to cut our teams, I'd say it's even. So it all comes how you classify a team. And they do a different way of classifying too. They have a principal, and then they have what they call academy principals, which are basically what we use as the assistant principals. Sometimes it's in frame. It's how you frame it.
Yeah, I think that's part of the issue here with treating these comparisons like they're sort of a gold standard. Y'all are gonna do what you want to do. I guess bring us the best comparables that you see fit.
Okay, next is Ester Iii Reallocation. Mr. Zickert mentioned this earlier on in the meeting in regards to information that was determined at the board curriculum meeting. I believe there were about 10 or 11 recommendations. You'll see the areas that received like 2 and 1 vote, and other areas that were shared at the meeting. And then the top 5 topics that received the most support from the curriculum committee are listed attached to this discussion item. Funding to support retention of staff, community events at schools in the evening hours, and funding going towards hiring a coordinator for that, increase bandwidth, improve air quality and HVAC, and stipends for content coordinators at the middle school level. Since there are not any content coordinators like there are department heads, no, sorry, that's not what they're called, content leaders at the high schools.
Yeah, I would also add a couple of these items that didn't have as many votes that might, I think we should probably move forward with. The funding to support recruitment of new staff and hard to fill positions. We did do recruitment efforts last year. We'll continue that probably. So this might be an opportunity to just replace things that we would have spent money on anyways with the grant funds. That's the same for CTE technology. And then down that only received one vote, the intervention platform for the dual language program for $50,000. That's, 280, 285. That didn't get as many votes, but we're probably going to need to do them anyways and we'll budget for them. So it might be a good idea to just go ahead and use ESSER funds for that.
Do you
Yeah,
know?
I think one of the things needs to be clarified is when they did the voting on this wasn't meant to say they didn't see any validity to any of them,
Right.
to all of them. That, just because they got one vote doesn't mean they didn't see any validity in it. What the voting was if you had to pick three, what were your top three? So you could think 4 and 5 were outstanding. You just thought 1, 2, and 3 may have been a little better.
Yeah,
So
that's true.
I think that just needs to be clarified.
In regards to the estimated costs, as well as if we were to move up, what you have recommended, Dr. Weisman, we know that there's money in the Ester III funds. Would that go over the reallocation of what we didn't use this year? Or would it go into the additional that we hadn't even cracked into?
So we, if I understand, there's definitely between money that we hadn't cracked into and things that we planned for this year that didn't work out for different types of reasons that would cover this.
That would cover the list
very
as well
easily.
as.
Everything on here, this would cover. If you're open to it, I think everything on there that has a dollar amount next to it, other than the vaccination bonus for students, is
That
actually
was a bone of contention at the
Yeah.
committee.
would probably be a win-win. So, if we throw in the musical instruments, that would be kind of a one-time spend, which is what a lot of the ESSER money is designed for and would help our students stay engaged in a new way.
I did mention that to this committee that it was my belief that we were choosing when maybe choice wasn't even necessary, that we could probably fund all that. We could probably fund all.
I think you're right. Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, the vaccination bonus, that might be something to step away from.
But if we can do everything else and we feel that we can, I don't see any reason having had it go through committee and go through discussion. I mean, admin doing work to come up with the ideas and go through committee. I don't think it's, I think it's great if we can do it all.
Great.
Yeah, I would say the vaccination bonus maybe.
Oh,
step
right,
away
with the
from.
exception.
Okay. Yep, that
There
helps.
was question about how that would be determined. How do you get it? What about the kids that are already vaccinated? Are we telling people if they have to be vaccinated? Like, it was a lot of. Yeah, Dr. Carson's nodding. It was a little bit. Okay, is everybody then in agreement that we should move this on to Megan's desk to start revising the ESSER III grant?
Yep. Yeah, I agree with that.
Good, good. Okay. Clear?
Yep.
All right. Next, upcoming contract renewals and reports.
I don't think I have anything to add specifically for that.
Moving on to administration reports. Oh, gosh, I'm sorry. Thank you. I really forgot about that.
Oh, yeah, we moved one.
I'm sorry. I moved one. I apologize.
Good catch, Pam.
The memorandum of understanding for paid administrative leave. This was the item that was moved from roll call to discussion. So discussion in regards to this would be a memorandum for all unions. That would be the BEA, the BEST, BESA, and BASS. And this would be to provide, this would be that for anyone that provides evidence that they have missed work due to a COVID-related sickness.
Mhm.
That they would not have to use their sick days and they would be, the sick days would be paid. without the accrual or without the loss of sick days. I said that correctly.
Correct.
Okay. This also would indicate that the benefit should apply to all employees regardless of vaccination status and would be retroactive back to Monday, February the 7th of 2022. Dr. Reisman, can you just give us a quick 2 or 3 sentence, just summary regarding what's going on in the state currently in regards to this?
Sure. So there is a bill that passed through the House and is being reviewed by the Senate that's similar. That's expected to pass and then be signed by the governor. It provides all school employees in the state paid administrative leave for COVID-related illnesses or absences for the entire school year if they're vaccinated. So we are, I think that just went. I think that passed the House 2 weeks ago and is under review now.
So this is something that we may be doing back to the beginning of the year. Once it makes it through.
Correct. I don't think we would need to review that here in terms of a memorandum. That would just default to state statute at that point.
And that is vaccination dependent.
The one currently, yes, is.
So I'd probably like to see the MOU be vaccination dependent too then. That's my 2 cents.
And then also make sure that all of the unions want their name on there and
Right.
are willing to say yes.
I would include a provision that if someone has a medical exemption from a doctor, that they're not eligible to receive a vaccine or their doctor advises that it's not in their best health interest to obtain the vaccine, medical doctor, then they could still be compensated, but otherwise I agree with Lisa.
Am I bringing back an MOU even if the governor signs that law?
No,
No,
I don't
yeah, if
Okay.
it comes back, if that comes in before we would get back to this, no.
Okay.
I would say no.
If it doesn't come back, is there anything to add that they would have a certain amount of time to get vaccinated if they just wanted to use
We could have that.
2
Yeah.
weeks or not 2
Yep.
weeks, but
Yeah, I think the current House bill does have some type of language around that, so it can mirror that language.
next, moving on to superintendent comments under administration reports.
Just want to recognize the school district. There were many people that were involved in contributing to the YWCA's Racial Justice Award that was given to the school district recently. Appreciate all of their good work. Also want to acknowledge and celebrate Rebecca Perry for her Golden Apple award that she received 2 weeks ago, a week and a half ago, or last week. Was it last week? Okay, just last week. The 10th. Okay, so recently. And then we do have here under the Ester Iii report, just updates on Care Solace, Tutor Me, some previous academic reports that were provided. I think probably the big update here in terms of the pandemic and our support for students is around the quarantines. We really decreased. I think this week we have single-digit number of students that are home. And so we are looking into reducing our active tutors because we just don't need all 3 of them right now. And then we're assuming that will continue to be low throughout the rest of the year. So we got a budget calendar in there. And now that Ms. Armstrong has been on the team, she's starting to get into the budget calendar here for us. Appreciate her work with that. And as far as a look ahead, we've got in April, Business Services Committee meeting, that first week in April. We do have a Facilities and Long Range Planning Committee meeting at the end of April. Then graduation is planned for Saturday evening and Sunday evening, May 21st and May 22nd. I know traditionally we've done kind of all day Saturday, and I know people may not have, board members specifically may not have this on their radar. Rock Valley, we were intending to have a graduation at Rock Valley College in the traditional format. But they, a couple months ago, just with the pandemic concerns and possible, influx again, did pull out and didn't sign that contract to reserve the facility. So we talked with the principals about having graduation outside again. But because we had some heat issues last year, we pushed those to the evenings. And I think that's all I have, unless there are any other questions for me.
Student registration update?
Yeah, Dr. Carson.
Sure, so opens up on right after spring break on the 5th, we'll be opening it up, and then we have events. There's an all-day event, they'll be at the Belvedere Community Building, so all day on the 7th, in the evening on the 20th of April, and then again on May 3rd, and then registration will close down, so really encourage folks to get registered as soon as possible. We'll be sending out emails and texts. So we appreciate everyone taking advantage of the opportunity of registration.
Dr. Carson, will it be like in previous years where you register and then later on you get a bill, or will you do it all at once?
No, the building would come later.
Later, okay.
It's just a registration.
And I also would add that there is a board curriculum committee meeting on April 12th. Do you have any other questions? Okay, at this time, the board will be going back into closed executive session to continue our discussions from earlier. There will not be action to follow. Do I have a motion to go into closed executive session regarding section 2, heading C, exception, sub number 1 of the Open Meetings Act to discuss the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees of the public body or legal counsel for the public body?
So moved to go to close executive session.
Member Herrera made the motion, member Whitcomb seconded the motion to go into closed executive session. Roll call, please.
Mr. Herrera,
Aye.
Mrs. Whitcomb,
Aye.
Mr. Booker,
Aye.
Mrs. Hauk, Mr. Zickert,
Aye.
Ms. Mayville,
Aye.
Mrs. Reed Nemec.
Aye.